Hades 2 game review begins. I completed Hades 2 fast. The first part is long gone too, skipping the dialogues after the middle. The purpose of this review is a non-stressful podcast on a familiar topic. You probably turned your entire feed into Hades by clicking on this and that. And I went there too. Okay, since the game is still in the top 5 popular ones, let's start the stimulation. There is usually a retelling of the same content. Skip it, you know. We will direct the associations to other rare sites. Let's start with the setting of the world. Gods and mortals live in the same physical space, not in the parallel astral which doesn't intersect with our world. The gods have the same organs of digestion and reproduction, and most importantly, they have receptors in the body and brain and neurotransmitters, and their motivation is still controlled by how many neurotransmitters like dopamine have entered their brain. Even primordial chaos, one of the gods that kind of appeared before the universe, has cells whose life should be supported by food, but he doesn't seem to eat. The fact that chaos has dressed up and pumped up so as to attract the opposite sex for reproduction, which is how this motivation works initially in our world, creates dissonance for me during the passage, and in order for there to be no dissonance, it is necessary to crush these associations, which I did. The gods are immortal, although their cells require oxygen and ATP to function. Chaos lives in space without oxygen and is alive. Zeus does not have altitude sickness. He does not care about pressure. It seems that there was a hint in the game that this was, so to speak, a chosen shell like a suit, and the gods choose the shell, I don't know, aesthetic preferences. It's strange that they didn't choose the Cthulhian monster as a form purely for a change, and Hephaestus conjured an ascetic wheelchair for himself. To kill all the enemies, Athena could choose a form of neurotoxin instead of a woman with a shield and spray it all over the mountain, but apparently this is not so aesthetically appealing. Why does Hestia, the goddess of hearts, have excess weight, which is formed from an excess of fatty foods? Is she eating fatty food as goddess and can go hungry and run on the track for 6 months? Why would she run if she could conjure up any form of magic for herself? Of course, the gods here are a visual stimulus in which a way as to exaggerate the maximized features in order to increase the degree of irritation. In addition, the game farms neurotransmitters into the player's head, therefore throwing almost all the gods of different fetishes and muscles will have a stronger stimulation effect on most players. That if there were stones or plants without eyes instead of people. Of course, developers are limited in their choice of visual incarnations of the gods by their maximized goal to minimally create the most habitually stimulating images familiar to the players. If everyone were jerking off to rocks instead of gods, there would be rocks of different colors and wearing hats. For a change, a stone in a wheelchair and stone with cracks should have been added, otherwise a certain audience would have caused problems. Of course, I don't mind that. Give me the usual familiar incentive too. I'm happy that the gods aren't stones. I'd get less of a kick of looking at the stones. Of course, Hades' world is postmodern attempt to use familiar associations from myths to glue pleasant hack and slash into something holistic. You walk in pieces. This is ridiculous myth based on the desire of the Greeks to be stimulated by familiar humanoid stimuli and therefore muscular gods. How can I transfer it with a smaller cringe? It is necessary to leave pleasant pieces in these gods and remove the annoying ones. Now Zeus is not a tyrannical freak, but somewhere there are hints of tyranny and ugliness, but when they meet, everything is gorgeous. He even has muscles. It would seem that you have died and the cells are no longer able to generate a first-person experience. But your cells are alive after death and in exactly the same configuration. The synapses in the brain have remained exactly the same, and the body's receptors sense water from a hot spring. Odysseus won't let you lie. However, not everyone is lucky. There are shadows in the world. They have cells, their totality, they suddenly also have receptors, they also breathe oxygen, as Dora is able to speak. The sounds she makes are generated by the tongue. Where the tongue is, there is salivation, and hence the intestines and stomach, which go into the afterlife kit. Does the ghost have guts too? What does that mean? Right, even after death you need a cleaner in the toilet. And we have such a cleaner, is the main character. She removes the corpses of fish from the ground, which are thrown to the floor by one of the bosses named Erida. For picking up corpses, you get the diamonds you need to buy carpets and clothes dryer. Do fish corpses have flattening in the form of ghosts of muscular fish with intestines? This is a mystery that needs to be solved as the story progresses. Characters and plot. Our main character Melinoe is a diving meat bag with receptors. Her stimulation took place in the usual way until some of her usual stimuli in the form of her family were trapped by the non-muscular Uncle Kronos, who is able to stop time, and therefore blood circulation. However, everyone doesn't die because of magic! So Melinoe wants to kill him because if she doesn't kill him, then the usual incentive won't come back. Melinoe doesn't want to sit on a bench, she wants to go into the woods and kill everyone with new weapon. She's having fun. I exchanged a few words with the inhabitants, and off we go to the murders. The witch trains Melinoe to be more effective at killing. The gods use Wi-Fi to send Melinoe an unknown stream of particles that inhabit her body and weapons, and the effectiveness of killing forest dwellers increases by 2 and 5% after the dash. The residents of the town in the forest tell Melinoe that she is good at killing random animals, and Melinoe says, "Yes, I'm good, I'm the murderer, I want to take an axe and spin so that the gods fly." Then Melina receives a Skype signal. It's Hermes calling and saying, "Do you want to dash more often?" Melina says, "No, I want my axe to chop guts 10% faster." And Hermes says, no question, "You're lucky, here's a blessing for you that increases gut damage by 20%. "Oh yes," Melina says, "oh yes." First, Melina slashes her mentor with an axe, then 3 singers, then a doggy, and then her grandfather. And it's not enough for her. They scream in pain because the receptors are in place to be reborn and experience that pain again. Let's recall grandfather's motivation. He was imprisoned for 1,000 years and suffered there. According to the wiki, his own children hacked him to pieces with a scratch for no reason. But he spared everyone. He just put them on pause. He himself sent monsters to Mount Olympus to kill Zeus and other gods. So Melina kills the monsters, then Kronos, then the monsters, then the Monster King. In order to not spoil, I will distort the descriptions so you don't guess. Melina kills everyone and finally finds peace. But no, her axe itches. The monsters respawn. They need to be killed. Preferably 1,000 more times to stretch them, the axe, by 5%. Now Melina is chopping everyone down a little less slowly. She adds a challenge to her rubble in order to not get bored. The gods are saved, but out of habit they send Melina upgrades for the axe. This is how life goes in Afterlife. If seriously, I liked it. The game provides a lot of dopamine until all the content becomes known. I'm glad I'm completely got rid of the game after the credits. The number of bangers in music is impressive. I liked it more than the first part. I couldn't really get a fan out of the characters because they were static. I like Kronos, Melina and the Witch, but their lines don't go beyond the usual expected to be remembered. But I'm not sure if it would be possible to do it better if we kept this format. Maybe add some lines between the portions or mini plots in the hub where the stimulation is gradually changing, like re-educating Ares and turning her from a garbage spreader into a cleaner, or trying to cure Hecate of allergies, or Nemesis suffers from inferiority and tries to do something about it by destroying space, or Zeus loses his reputation and tries to attract attention, or Dionysus has the existential crisis related to the fact that he drank his brain. I think that more bold subplots would be received with delight and just be in the format of dialogues. There are no complaints about the rubble. I couldn't even assemble the imba. What is it? The feeling of progression was very fast, and the subsidence was only at the moment when it was necessary to learn the patterns of his attack in order to survive the last boss on Olympus. And until I learned it, I needed to farm again for 40 minutes. Unfortunately, I realized this and immediately went to YouTube and learned it. The balance is great because it doesn't slide into Dark Souls, and a slight jump in concentration on evasion makes a sharp boost to survival. Spoilers for ending. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I liked that Grandpa wasn't killed. It seems they had a choice to either kill him or do something else, and of course the second option is less disappointing. Grandpa is now kind and destroys expectations, which gives a Grandpa a Peppercorn. You seem to be used to hating him, but now you need to love him. Nice to break the template. Well, really, he's too useful to kill when there's not a threat anymore. The review is over. I'm looking for a family. I have written a document with details of what I want and what I give. It is in the description. Subscribe to the channel, otherwise everything was in vain. Subscribe to public content where a lot of people write something and they give me pills. Join them. Pills is smiles. I remind you that I am looking for laboratories for discoveries in physics. Bye everyone, and may the rubble, these words mean crushing its incorrect translation, of monsters be with you with an axe for the sake of stimulating the receptors.